If you could, who is one person from your past you would love to chat with today? Hey there, I'm Danielle Zapchenk, and thanks for joining me today on the Parable Podcast. Meet my middle school and high school youth pastor, Greg Sampson, who shares about his faith, change, and learning you don't have to be in a hurry.
Youth ministry is funny. I would always tell people, it's one of the only ministries where just when you're getting started, you end. I was your youth pastor for a finite time, and then I wasn't. And that's probably a good thing because you had a chance to learn and grow from others. But youth ministry is funny in that sense. And you go through that cycle every year where you're watching this graduating class leave, and it's both encouraging and heartbreaking.
Here's my conversation with Greg Sampson. I am so excited to share with you a friend today. I haven't probably seen him in about 20 years, but this person was integral to my faith growing up. He was my youth pastor, I think for middle school and high school. And so when I first started this podcast, I was thinking about all the different people of my life. And I'm like, gosh, if I could just get Greg Sampson on this podcast, it would just be a treat. And so it has finally happened. Please welcome Greg Sampson.
Thank you, Danielle. And it is an honor to be here. Just like I'm thrilled with you, your life story, and what you're doing to help people tell their stories. And that's life-giving and affirming. I'm just super proud to be on here with you.
Thank you so much. I would say the same for you, Greg. I think our family went to the church that you were the youth pastor at, probably around when I was in 5th grade. And so did you do junior high and high school?
I would do both the middle school and the high school. That was kind of the role of the youth pastor at that church at the time. So I probably had you from 6th grade. You heard all my sermons at least 6 times, so if not more.
I was really trying to, when you think back, okay, now I have to reflect back on 20 years. And I told you I got out my journals to see if there was anything in there. The thing that I remember going to the Power of One concert. That was, I think, Skillet, DC Talk, Newsboys. I feel like those were the only bands that ever played over and over again. But I do specifically remember, it was in Green Bay. We were sitting on the floor having pizza, and you just you did such a good job of just checking in and being present. You said there's a bunch of sermons, and I'm sure I heard many of that, but I think that's what mattered the most to me is that presence. And obviously I thought you were hilarious. That's really hard for 6th grade to high school to capture attention. So I remember that. I remember you were the first person that ever let me taste a Frappuccino that was in the bottle.
Oh no! What have I created?
I think you were driving me. I was babysitting your sons, and you were driving me home. And we didn't even live that close to each other, but you guys must have needed a babysitter. And you're like, "Hey, have you ever tried this?" And it was 9:00 at night. I thought it was super cool. You're like, "Oh no, just funny. Keep it."
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. There's a handful of people of my life that I'm I could point to and say yes, these people have shaped my faith, and so you are one of them. And I'm so grateful for this conversation. I'm sorry. I'm also a crier. I don't remember doing that in high school, but the emotion comes out. So thank you.
Funny you say that. So I used to MC those things too, both Life Fest and Power of One. And so the years you were mentioning, I can't remember if I was the MC for those years or not. So those were the, big opportunities, quote unquote, that people thought that were the big deals. But the having pizza on the floor and checking in with everybody was always so much more important to me. And, introducing someone to a Frappuccino, all those things, those kind of things, those are the stuff that matters. And you would try to tell people that, particularly in youth ministry. If I had the opportunity to do a training for youth leaders or youth workers or whatever, those are the things I would always say. They don't really care how much you know. They just know you care,
Yeah.
And those principles, I think, are true universally in ministry, but I think we forget about them really quick when there's other shinier opportunities. So
absolutely,
that means a ton to hear that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
Sure. As a parent now of a 12 and a 15-year-old, you don't think about okay, I know as a parent, what my role is, but you're who else is feeding and speaking in your kids, because for some reason, sometimes the words that are coming out of my mouth don't seem to matter. And so when they started going to youth group, I would have like flashbacks and think like, oh, I'm just so grateful for the youth pastors out there. I mean, it's hard work. If I think you guys had really little kids at the time when you started youth pastoring. And I mean, and like also sometimes kids just don't care. And so you're like, let me tell you about Jesus. And I felt like you had such an excitement about it. And maybe you didn't feel that way all the time, but like I felt that. And for being there for, 8 years of just watching you do that was awesome. So tell me, how did like Jesus become more than a name for you? Like, was that something that was early on in your life? Did you have a youth pastor that impacted your heart?
I did. I went to, this is dating me a little bit, but Willow Creek back in the day had a youth ministry that sort of like rivaled the beginning of the church in the sense that a lot of people knew about this crazy youth movement, this youth ministry called Sun City. And if you were a kid in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, you probably had a friend who went to it or something like that. It was a big, big group. So I was a part of that group. Great leader named Don Cousins. Don then sort of became a mentor to me. So when I was 18, I began to understand more of the complexities of faith and what it meant to my own heart and soul. Like what happens when you mature as a young person, right? You think you should have already heard that or known that, but all of a sudden it's like it becomes more real. Yeah. So that's what for sure happened with me. And I became a leader in Sun City. That was even before the church was built, the new building in Barrington. I became a leader at Sun City, and Don Cousins mentored me and 7 other guys who were the leaders of Sun City. And there's no other paid staff that I can remember. There was Don and maybe, a worship guy or a singer or something like that, a music coordinator. But it was us young people leading other students, right? Yeah. And so when we talk about our history, the student ministry that you experienced was born, it doesn't matter what, I guess what the old relationship was. And certainly there's been a lot of things that have happened in that church movement, in the megachurch movement and evangelicalism, on and on and on and on. But the core principles, the stuff that we'll probably talk about in a little while, of just following with your whole heart and being a devoted follower and wanting to live a life of kindness and integrity and an example to others. And so Don, took these 18, 20-year-old kids and basically treated us like young adults that we were and gave us responsibilities. And we responded to that, I think. And, he was a great discipler. And so there's no doubt that, the stuff that you experienced came from a real mindset that, give the students the keys to the kingdom. Don't entertain them. Is entertainment a part of it? Yeah. We live in a society that entertainment is central to that. But more importantly, experience. Yeah. And you got to do things. I remember you doing drama things and stuff like that when you were like a freshman. Like those were things that you enjoyed, and hopefully they were really great experiences that showed you, it's not just about that guy or the other guy who's doing this. It's all of us that get to help and lead others. So that's kind of my way back machine. And that would have been 1980 when this happened. So we're really turning back the clock a little bit. But that's my start.
I'm sure, Greg, you've done multiple things in your life. Like for youth pastoring, like that took a significant time commitment. When did you say like, okay, yes, like I don't remember what year you came to Christ the Rock, but also like the amount of time that you spent there. Like how did that like shift and change for you as a youth pastor? Because it takes a lot of mental energy to like stay at that level of like, how can I like keep imparting wisdom upon teens? Like, what did that look like for you during that time of your life?
During that time, I came to our church that we attended together. I came there from Rawhide, which is a place for young men that are in trouble with the law, and is an incredible organization. And that was more like sort of like boot camp in a sense for me, because it wasn't like giving messages or creating programs or, anything of that nature. It was just getting into the meat and potatoes of people's lives, and particularly young men who came with a little bit of baggage, a little bit of trouble, a little struggles, and all of them were adjudicated. So they all had some court contact ranging from everything. So I think out of that, and then having the opportunity to then transition into like sort of ministry proper in a church, I think I was pretty well prepared. Mm-hmm. And I think I believed deep in my heart that young people, even as young as junior high, had what I now, I guess, would see as like agency and the ability to begin to make decisions on their own that maybe weren't the decisions that their parents wanted them to make. And the bad decisions led toward, trouble stuff. And the good decisions, although maybe met with some family strife at times, I think really empowered young people to begin to grow into who they are. And so I actually volunteered. I might have been a volunteer when you first started. Maybe. I'm not sure. But I think I was full-time, like as a youth pastor the whole time you were there. All that to say, the time and the effort and the life interruption, that it was, I probably overcommitted a little bit. I think that's just the nature of being in it that long. Yeah. But I left youth ministry when my oldest son Tate was entering 6th grade. Okay. Because I didn't want to be his youth pastor. I didn't want to be my kid's youth pastor. So that was like the cutoff for me. I told him a year in advance, I'm probably not going to do this, and I've been doing it for a long time, up to 20 years in ministry already by then, So that was difficult to sort of leave youth ministry, but I also saw the students that I had grow, and I wanted to grow with them too. Mm-hmm. Youth ministry is funny. I always would tell this to folks, and it's now that you've sort of cajoled it in my memory, I would always tell people, it's one of the only ministries where just when you're getting started, you end. Like there's no reason, like kids aren't leaving, like they're not moving, or well, in some cases they go to college and stuff like that, but it's designed to be a means to an end, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to be in this thing that long. I was your youth pastor for a finite time, and then I wasn't. And that's probably a good thing because you had a chance to learn and grow from others. But youth ministry is funny in that sense. And you go through that cycle every year where you're watching this graduating class leave. And it's both encouraging and heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the hardest thing about youth ministry is realizing that you pour all this time and energy. And to your point, young people take a ton of energy. And I had it, so I was okay. But you pour a ton into that experience and hope it all goes well. See you later. And obviously you can keep in touch and all that kind of stuff, but it is a unique ministry in that sense. And I had a friend tell me this, and I hope it's an adage that works for our conversation. He was telling me about a friend who just died of cancer like the day before. And I was like, man, that's so sad. And he said, yeah, it was, but we got to talk, we got to connect and, got to say our goodbyes. And it was really powerful. But the cool thing that he said was, Greg, friends are in your life for 3 reasons. I learned this a long time ago. They're in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And he said, this was one of my lifetime friends. And not everybody is going to be a lifetime friend. But you can be grateful for the friends that were in your life for a reason. And you can be equally grateful for the friends that are in your life for a season. And I think that's maybe one of the cool things of youth ministry. It has a season, and that's okay. We can lament that or we can celebrate it. Yeah. And maybe it's a little bit of both.
I think in the moment, we don't recognize like what part of this is happening in our life. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of like stories of reflecting back and saying, oh, okay, I see why God utilized this portion of my life or this person for this time. And then there can be some grief along with it, but also truly, I think like some praises coming out of it of like, okay, here's what God showed me through this season. Like I didn't understand it in the minute, when we were playing some crazy games in youth ministry, was there a reason for it? And I'm like, yeah, there was. Like there was some real good stuff that came out of it. Yeah. And you know what? And then I took it after I left and I went to school. Like I did youth ministry with, the church that I worked for the next 6 years. Like I think it's like, I like was impacted in such a way, like here, like, let me pour into these kids. And I still like our daughter was a part of something last year where I was able to like just pour into these high school students for like 2 months. And I'm like, it was my jam. Like I loved it so much because I'm like, let me hear about your life and let me give you wisdom. So I can just see like those moments and you're just like, thank you, God. Like as I experienced that because of you and I was able to pour it into somebody else's life. So
it's cool to hear.
Yeah. So Greg, I have more questions, but I think that this is going to tie back into your own parable story. Like you just said, like there's seasons and there's a reason why things have happened. And so you came today with one of your stories. And so I'd love for you to share that today.
Okay, so I recently came across a video that was talking about a church that I had founded after I left the megachurch that we went to. And it was a little church that met in a bar, and it was a very unique experience. It was what I did right after youth ministry, when I got out of youth ministry. It wasn't necessarily negative at all. I mean, at least, toward me, I didn't take it as that. But it was this person telling my story.
Yeah.
And that really kind of rattled me in a sense, because that's not what happened, I would think, in my head, or that's not really what was going on, or whatever. I had all these objections, and that's okay. That's normal. I mean, we all experience life a little different. But what really got to my heart was me not telling my story. So it's okay if this person did that and had this experience and shared an entire, hour-long message on that part of their life. Good for them. But for me, it was kind of a wake up to say, well, you can tell your story. You can be one who tells the story. And so I've really been not doing a whole lot in ministry for a long time. And just even the invitation of the Parable podcast made me think of stories and all kinds of things of that nature. So the takeaway, and I know this is kind of a roundabout way to get there, but early on in my sort of like Bible school type training, one of the things that I learned about the parables of Jesus is that they are, the simplest way to put it for someone is that they are stories that attach to truth. That word para is that attachment, or sort of a cleaving to truth, if you will. And you think about all the para words that we know, it's something that connects to something else. So if we're talking about these wonderful stories of Jesus that attach to really deep truths, right? That's the takeaway. That's why parables, so Jesus invented them, I think, because it was a brand new way to communicate with people. And another little adage to tie that together to me and to my story that I just told was, several years ago I heard an adage that said, truth and time walk hand in hand. And I started to think about how that truth of a parable and that those deep truths stay with you and sort of get borne out in time. And the same thing happens with our human interactions, right? Someone can say something, someone can do something, someone can claim something, but if there's a hitch in your soul, it says, this just doesn't seem right, or the direction that I think we should go. To lean on that truth and time walk hand in hand is really beautiful. And in this era of our lives, where we are in humanity in 2025, we think everything has to happen quick. And somebody posts a meme or an answer or a reply, and people getting these, back and forths on social media about things without much thought and certainly without much time. And I think when we think about the beauty of truth and time walking hand in hand is that we don't have to be in a hurry. So I didn't have to respond to that thing that I saw that seemed inaccurate, that kind of bugged me.
Yeah.
I just had a chance to really reflect on it and realize it's okay if that happened. And people have a right to share their life and their story and how they perceive things. But maybe, Greg, you should tell your own story someday. Yeah. And so I think that's what, I'm 63 now. So I think I'm getting to that point in life where I'm like, I want to be able to put those stories together and have them be helpful and have them be connected to truth. Yeah. So that people can benefit.
So when you say not to be in a hurry, what really pulled out of that for you when truth happens? Because you're thinking, okay, well, I need time to think about this, or where was that going for you? So
for me, it's sort of applying helpful principles that are certainly in the Bible, where it talks about if someone wrongs you, you're supposed to go to them, right? And talk to them. And I wonder, I always reflect on that verse and think, well, I wonder how many people started walking, the mile or the half mile or the distance or whatever, in their sandals and tunics to go see these people and get halfway and go, after some thought, I don't have to be that concerned about that. And they turn around and they go home. So there's time and space implied to making things right. And we're not always on the right side. We're only seeing things through our filter, through our experience, through our insecurities, if you will. I think where a lot of that comes from for me is not being in a hurry to change someone else or even change myself. Allow that to have that test of time where we walk a little bit and then we realize, I guess it wasn't so bad, or I guess it wasn't so horrible, or whatever, or maybe I saw things wrong. And like I said, in this age, I think that's one of the hardest things that we all face, because we want to respond.
Yeah.
We want to lash out or make a correction, or, fix someone's grammar, even something dopey like that. But the truth is, allowing ourselves the space and time to be spoken to and to be taught is a powerful thing. So that's really where I think that principle has helped me a ton in all the things that I've done.
That's so good, Greg. I think sometimes when you just like think of something, or someone says something back to you, you just sort of like, let me tell you the actual truth right now. And maybe it is the truth, but also like, what is that indicator of our heart, of like God saying like, yeah, you can lash out, or you can be the right one in the conversation. But what is that indicative of your soul? Like, why do you have to be right? Why do you have to say the truth? And it is really challenging. You were a youth pastor for a long time. You said you stepped out of ministry, you started a church, all these things. Like, for the last 20 years, where has your faith shifted and changed? Not to say that it has gotten worse or gotten better, but there are things like, if I remember back from like 6th grade to 12th grade, of like, these are the absolutes, these are the truths of everything I believe.
For sure.
Let me just like tell you, I remember in like high school, we had this like circle around thing, and we brought up like very specific topics. I don't even think that class maybe should have been allowed.
Yeah.
But I was just like, let me tell you this is what the Word of God says. Like, I was adamant. And also, I was just like young and immature, and I hadn't had experience to be like, oh, this is everything I've been told for the majority of my life, so this has to be right. And so, has there been anything like that over the last couple of years? So you're like, wow, I've really had to think about this.
Yeah, a lot, Danielle. And the overarching thing I will say is this. My faith has gone to being mostly public to mostly private.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean that I don't talk about my faith at all. I do quite a bit. But the encouragement that I would give to someone else now is much more, be you, be yourself, be in touch with your own soul, understand what God is telling you, not what I'm telling you, and I think for me, being sort of a leader, as I was in a lot of different ways for a long time, you always think you're supposed to do that. Well, then all of a sudden I don't have a platform anymore. The little bar church ended because we had zero money, and our family situation was like dire. Like I couldn't do it, or my wife would leave me because literally we were living on a shoestring, because we didn't get support from anybody. We just did it with kind of blood and guts. So when that ended, there was no next step. You do church in a bar, and you're like, all right, that's kind of peak right there. You're not going to get any farther away from the mothership than that. So after that, I really fell into just be a citizen, just be a person. You don't have to be the guy who's up front leading or anything like that. And that was really, really good for me, and is really good for me, because my faith is redefined now to much more of something that is very intensely personal to me and less known to others, maybe.
Yeah.
But I did do something this last year that may sound a little bit over the edge for some of your listeners, but that's okay, because good conversation always brings about, more good conversation. So I decided a little over a year ago to run for political office. So I ran for what was called the 5th Assembly District here in Wisconsin, and chose to do it because I was always, the past 10 years or so, very curious about how government works, how things get done, how people get helped. I'd love to say that the church does 100% great job of helping everybody on the margins, but we know that that's not true. And do I wish the church would sort of redeem some of that? Yep, I do. But it's okay that we have a government that is well funded. We think of our schools, and we think of the things that we take for granted. And we want to be sure that those who don't have a chance. And so I wanted to look into why those things weren't working. Why is this so hard? And that's way too complex. That's like 4 podcast episodes to talk about. But I ran as a Democrat. And I think when that first happened, two things that I really noticed happened. One was that the Christian folk seemed to assume that I was no longer a person of faith.
Wow.
I know, but I get it, and I'm okay with that, and I knew that would happen. But there was definitely a vibe from certain people that, like, stay away, like, watch out for him. He's risky now, he's not on our team anymore. And I would say, I'm just not in your club anymore, and I'm okay with that. But that happened. And then the other thing that happened is when I began to campaign and start talking to people, particularly those that were like in the local Democratic Party and co-candidates who also ran along with me. And I met some of the finest and most wonderful people that I've ever had opportunity to do something with. They all have a faith too. Yeah. And it was freeing for them to say, oh, Greg's talking about his faith. Well, I can talk about my faith too. And to think that we somehow relegated, Republicans to having the corner of the market on faith and Democrats being heathen and unable to talk about faith is really that's a real problem that we have to face in our political system and in our government and everywhere. But moreover, more than anything, Danielle, I was so heartened that we could have conversations about faith with people that you would automatically think maybe they're on the outside of that. And you know what? Some of them are, but they're on the outside for a reason. And they were motivated to get into politics maybe because they got marginalized, that they got pushed to the margin, that they didn't have a seat at the table at youth group because of their lifestyle or because of choices that they made or things of that nature. And I think there's an opportunity for people to come together and maybe put aside those labels. And so running for office gave me another chance to talk about my faith more publicly, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah. And so that was a lot of fun for me. And I made no secret of it. And I didn't have to denounce my old ties or anything like that. I just had to share with people. Well, this is how I got there. This is what I'm concerned about. And what I see, people want to take it to the highest level. They want to take it since it was a presidential election, it was pretty intense. I'll be honest with you. It was very, very intense. Boiling over type of intense, as we all know. But when I would talk to people, when I'd be out knocking on doors and stuff, they would have their, 13 talking points. And then I would maybe stop them about halfway and say, but I know those are things you see on the news. I understand that. But do you have kids or grandkids who go to school here in Wisconsin? Do your kids go to Little Chute Public School? My wife works there. I want the best for that. And that's what smaller government does. That's what state government does. State government provides funds for the schools. And if those funds don't come, somebody is going to be left to the margin. Yeah. And it's not going to be the kid who's from a great family and who has a support system all the way around. It's going to be the kid who is on the margins and who probably needs breakfast and lunch and probably needs after school programs and might need extra care and tutoring and all that kind of thing. So those are the things that when I think we bring them down to reality, I sure hope we can find more common ground. I don't think we're there yet. I hope we will be. Yeah. But it's a long journey because we're so tainted by the process now that I think it's I lost my election, pretty much knew I was going to lose when I went in. And I wasn't hurt that I lost. I really wasn't. Like I said, I was more prepared. And some of those unlikely suspects reached out to me after and told me that they were proud of me and that I ran my campaign honorably and clean, and I never disparaged my opponent. I never, threw people under the bus. I never did anything like that. And that meant a ton to me because some of these people were really, really conservative. And I think by just saying I'm running as a Democrat, but I'm still the same guy with the same faith, with the same love, with the same humanity, with the same grace to give to folks that I was before. And so that meant a lot that sort of truth in time concept got recognized. I will mention just one thing because I think it's worth it. Vote Common Good is a national organization that helps people like me create messages to talk about faith. I don't want to say it's a canned thing, but it's like discover who you are, and then kind of follow these principles of kindness and openness and curiosity and all these different little principles that people of faith should have. Respect, all those things were a part of my campaign because of Vote Common Good. Vote Common Good put it into a usable sort of chunk for me to be able to say, this is who I am, and I'm not afraid to talk about faith with you, even though you might already discount. But that's, I'm not going to run again, I don't think. Someone else is going to run for this, a younger person that I'm super excited about. It's going to run for our 5th Assembly District. I don't think I could run for governor. So all that to say, I learned a ton, and I think by doing something like that, I learned more about myself and I learned more about others than I did in a concentrated time. I mean, it was 8 months of like accelerated growth and learning, and I'm very, very, very grateful for that. And I will never forget the more, I'm going to say, more ultra conservative side who reached out and said, good job. Good job. I was happy you did it. That meant a ton. That meant more than a lot of things. Yeah. Because they were watching and they saw, maybe we can have a conversation.
Conversations matter, really. I mean, because what happens is, just like your life, Greg, you were involved with youth ministry. There is this like desire to help youth and just an awareness. And so for me too, of like, here I came out of youth group. Now I'm an adult. Now I have proximity to other people in my life, or I'm a parent and I understand, like that kid doesn't have access to food, and how did they get like breakfast, lunch each day? Or this is my neighbor who thinks differently than me, or here's the woman that, is a single parent. And for me as a person on leadership at our church, like how are we serving her? Not to diminish or shame her in any way, but like how can we truly as a church come alongside? And so when we talk about like those truths of like, here's what we believe from childhood, like really thinking about them as adults of like, okay, I go back to here's what the Bible says. This is what Jesus taught us. And I know that this could be a slightly unconventional thing to say, but I don't believe Jesus was a Republican or a Democrat. I think, he loved people. He was kind. And so sometimes when you're talking about those labels, like we can easily say, well, like this is what was happening. And so this is where I need to vote. And we remove then the conversation. It becomes more of like, here are like rules and, standards that we're like, okay, but let's go back to the main thing about Jesus and love and honoring and respecting and loving others. And it is a tough conversation. Like it is uncomfortable for me. I hate confrontation, especially with people I love, because, for me, I'm like, let's just think about this for a second. And so I would say like over time, like that really has been a journey of understanding. And I think that's really what faith is, recognizing, okay, why do I believe the things that I was told in 6th grade? And I've known so many friends that have really deconstructed, and I've known some that have walked away, but I've known some who've really taken the time to think, okay, here's how I can grow and really make this faith my own, even though I thought it was. Like, how has like that happened for you? Have you had to deconstruct some of those things to say, okay, it's not really about labels anymore. It's like, here's the truth of the Bible.
I think I would have described myself as maybe being in deconstruction 5 to 10 years ago. Others for sure, my friends would have probably said that for sure. Like he's not even a Christian anymore. But that wasn't really what was going on, and I knew that. But I think the reconstruction process is more of a story, right? Yeah. Because part of my reconstruction was I felt called to run for office. I can't explain it. And I felt very clearly called to run as a Democrat. And I tell you, like, I knew I was open more as a person. That part of the reconstruction is being open to what God might have for you and his place for you. And your comment about Jesus being, neither Republican or Democrat is spot on. Let's not do that anymore. Let's not try to align our Savior, who had so many wonderful things to say and instruct and teach and encourage and all the things that Jesus did as a teacher, but also more importantly does to our hearts, that reducing him to political ideology is unhelpful and doesn't get us farther in our faith at all, I don't think. I think reconstructing is what, and I would encourage anybody who's sort of in that deconstruction phase to like be open to what does the reconstruction look like, you know, because it doesn't have to be the same, like you don't have to start again at, you know, 6th grade youth group and work your way back through again and believe all the things that you believed again. You just need to identify this is where you are now. This is what is helpful to you now. I read a ton more now than I think I ever have. I still consume news and different podcasts and different things like that, but most importantly, I want to learn slow. I want to dig into a topic like racism and understand it better from the perspective of, say, for example, John Lewis, who was a great Democratic congressperson from Georgia who was a part of the civil rights movement. And he was the one who coined the expression, go get in some good trouble. That's really a cool concept. And he was a preacher. And so I want to understand that part of faith. You know, I want to understand how did we get to a place where a whole segment of society feels unloved, unworthy, uncared about, destined for bad stuff because of their life experiences? How did that oppression have its effect? And what can I do as someone who had no clue about people being oppressed for the balance of my life do to just make it right? It's a conversation and a hug and a acknowledgement and all those things. You know, that's really all it is. But we're so stuck. We won't do that. So that's what reconstruction means to me. I want to live my life as a fearless person of faith who loves deeply and let everything else kind of fall where it does. It's a simpler faith, that's for sure. I don't lose myself over a verse I don't understand. I'm okay with it. That's part of the process. It's not all about us. It's about everyone else, really.
That's so good, Greg.
Anyway.
I recently did a message about, you know, just like holiness is equal, like not just about strict rules, it is about fun. And I said something in there just like that, you know, my hope for our church and for people of faith is that we become one of like whimsy and wonder and encouragement and excitement. And I think that is what the heart of the Parable podcast is that we encourage conversations because when we listen to other people, we hear their stories. And again, our stories may not be exactly the same.
Right.
There's more than likely we're going to have a lot of differences. But really, when we get down to the heart of the matter, like that's where we get to experience Jesus and like just really have that understanding of asking those questions. And that kind of goes back to what you said at the beginning of like taking that time to really think instead of being like, am I just the one to rush in and say, well, like this is what you need to believe in any capacity.
Right.
But just taking that time to say like, hey, I'm going to sit with this with you and God and just I'm going to be a good neighbor. I'm going to be a friend. I'm going to be a mom, dad, whatever, you know, and I'm just going to go to work and I'm going to live out my life because that's what Jesus called me to do. Yeah. Gosh, Greg, I've already told you we're only going to go 30 minutes, but I could keep going. When you think about, you said you're 63. As you think about like the next chapter of your life, what are you most looking forward to?
That's a good one. You know, obviously the tangible life plan things like retirement and maybe living somewhere on a lake or something like that. Those are fun to think about, right? But I think I still have a little fire in the belly in a sense. And I have been toying with writing a book for an awfully long time. And, you know, every 5-year increment of my life, I think, well, the book will be really different now than it was, you know, 5 years ago. But I think some of the best advice that I've gotten about writing is just start. Just do it. Just start. So I've written some stuff that I'm starting to put together, and I would love to accomplish that before the end of my days. My son said there's nothing wrong with writing a memoir. A lot of times I deny myself, like, oh, who wants to read about my life?
Yes.
If it can be instructive to someone, then do it. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about, how can I put this? I'm very fearful for our country. I must state that. I must say that I'm nervous about the direction of our country. And I say that only because we touched on that a little bit in the past. We have to be people who stand up with great courage. And when we see folks being harmed, wounded, damaged, soul crushed, etc., go to a protest. You know what I mean? Like, don't be afraid to do that. Even if you don't agree with everything that the other folks believe. If you see the general tone and tenor of our country becoming a place that's not safe, or only safe for a certain small segment of people, that's not America. Sorry for that little political pastoral message, but I'm excited about what might come next then. Okay. Because if we go through this pain and if we kind of get through like people being divided and that's what the pain is, right? Like you said, confrontation and this kind of thing and lack of understanding and all that other stuff that will continue for a while. But the joy comes in the morning, right? Yeah. And I think that as we continue to walk through this with dignity, with kindness, with strength and courage and those things with our neighbors, with our friends, with our family, whoever, but continue to stay engaged. I realize we may, as humans, need to put up some boundaries and say, I can't really be with that person anymore right now. And that's okay too. That's a season that maybe we can live through. But I do believe that people are more hungry than ever to talk about their faith. And that faith may not look like our faith, and that faith may not feel or, gather together like our faith did or does, but it's okay. Like, let people go on a journey. Let people begin to find out. I love that you said that at your church about whimsy and fun and those kind of things. We need to make space for that. We have to. A mental health crisis is off the charts right now. And if we don't acknowledge that and say, well, why are all these people, struggling with their mental health? Well, guess what? We've been part of the problem. Faith factories, if you will, places that have unknowingly put a heavy yoke, a burden, a fear onto people. Anything like that we've done, let's move away from that. Let's not be people like that. Let's be peddlers of freedom. Yeah. That's what I'm looking forward to. And I think there's some very smart thinkers that are going to guide us, and we'll probably see them come to the front over the next couple of years and people that we can get on board with.
Greg, thank you so much. If people wanted to get connected to you, what would be the best way to do that?
My Instagram, which is just at Greg Sampson. That's the easiest. Obviously, I love having friends on Facebook, so look me up on Facebook. You're more than welcome to do that too. Either place is fine. If someone who says they saw me on the Parable podcast wants to reach out on Facebook, I would absolutely love that. I would love to have a friendship that way with you. And then for sure, I would encourage folks, and this may be a little risky for your position in a church, and I don't want to put you at risk, but if you feel that Vote Common Good would be a good resource for people to at least start to talk or see videos about Christian nationalism, about some of those kind of things that they talk about, they'll also be able to read things about candidates from their area. They have a long list of candidates that you can see, what is this person like? What do they believe? Why are they aligning with this Christian group? It may help some people.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'll put everything in today's show notes. Greg, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm so glad we reconnected. You really have been an integral part of my life, and I've just seen the ripple effects, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. And I want to reflect that back to you. I hope you know how happy I am for you, how proud I am of you and the person that you've become. And you have answered your call. God bless you for that, and keep of good cheer. And your attitude and your obvious love for people comes right through these things. So keep it up.
Thank you so much, Greg. Hey, my hope is that the Parable Podcast is always a safe place for conversation. We get to hear other people's ideas, and that we are a people that have a listening ear and an open heart like Jesus. Thanks to Greg for sharing his story and his impact on my life. I love you so much, Greg, and encouraging us to reflect on our last 20 years of our life, if, of course, you're older than 20 years. To connect with Greg, simply visit daniellezapchenk.com for details. And here are 2 reflection questions from our time with Greg. Number 1, who was the person that opened up faith for you, maybe for the first time, and helped you get excited about it? Number 2, what deep truth are you wrestling with that you could spend more time this week investigating and bringing that towards God? Before you go, could you do me a favor and click on our show notes to take our listener survey? And in doing so, I'm going to give you 10 basic tips to enhance your conversations and really listen well. This is a great skill that you can always hone and master over and over again. This episode was edited by my lovely husband, Eric Zapchenk, and we hope you were encouraged to think about your own story. Remember, your parable showcases how God has been with you every step of the way. We'll see you back again next week on the Parable Podcast.